Shalom from Jerusalem. This is Powers in Play, our monthly program dealing with global and some regional issues. And today we are winding down 2023 and welcoming 2024. We are trying to find and pick winners and losers for the year which has passed and have our crystal ball aimed at the incoming year. With us today, a heavyweight set, Dr. Uzi Arad, formerly the National Security Advisor and head of the National Security Staff and the former division chief for Mossad. Uzi, welcome.
Hello.
Dr. Eran Lerman, Colonel, retired Deputy Head formerly of the National Security Staff and a senior military intelligence official. And to combine the experiences of the two, retired Brigadier General or Reserve Brigadier General Amnon Sofrin, a senior military intelligence official, and then Head of Intelligence for Mossad. Amnon, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Uzi, if you look back, it seems as if a year has passed, and actually it is exactly a year. If you look back to January of 2023 and what has transpired in Israel, but in the region in general since then, who would you say comes out of the year a winner in absolute terms and relatively to their own position last year?
Well, let me reverse the question.
Of course. Who can stop you?
Well, as long as I say it in English and not in Yiddish. Who is the loser? And for that, one needs another language, Latin, because the year 2023 was, as they say, the annus horribilis for Israel. A terrible year. Because in very simplistic historical terms, the first half of the year, Israel became embroiled in a domestic crisis that reached the proportions of what people said almost civil war. So intense it was, so destructive it was of Israel's fabric as a state. It took the form of violent turns. The possibility of violence also occurring was not dismissed, and it took its toll very heavily in many aspects of Israel's condition. It harmed Israel economically and otherwise. That war was not terminated. It was put in abeyance in the summer when we were nearing, in fact, the other war, which is we were attacked by surprise from outside. And that was also exceedingly disruptive because it involved great use of force, invading Israeli sovereignty, the very sovereignty that was being affected the first year, and against the backdrop of a continuing internal, say, latent war for the time being, the regional war, what is now happening in Gaza, took place. And when it took place with the most disastrous results that one can have when one is attacked by surprise and with such violent means. And we're still at that war. I think there is no other nation that has gone through simultaneous crisis of this effect, both of them disruptive and destructive.
But do you think there is any causal relationship between the first 9 months of the year, which you described as almost civil war, and the last 3 months of actual war with Hamas?
Well, we have to see the evidence. You know, we have no evidence. We're very short on the inside story from the Hamas end and exactly how they argued. I have a suspicion that the fact that they noticed how Israel has entered a moment of internal weakness, how we were become less united or unified, how dysfunctioning our government was. And that became an opportunity that presented itself. And their consideration was always to wait with their offensive options until a moment of opportunity presents itself.
So if there is deterrence, and we all speak about this ephemeral term as if it is real, it was degraded.
Yes, I don't think there was much deterrence to speak of. I think this is one of our other mistakes when we espouse a policy, a doctrine, which was like a house of cards in terms of their real existence. We told ourselves a story that we wanted to believe, but there was no real evidence. In fact, we did not deter at all.
Eran.
The possibility was optional, and it was put into effect when it was so decided.
Uzi Arad terms Israel, regrettably enough, of course, a loser this year. Is there a zero-sum game here in the region with Israel's neighbors in which if Israel loses, someone else wins? And who is that someone?
Well, it's not exactly a zero-sum game because we are not the only two players in a very complex landscape. But clearly, Iran is right now riding what it looks upon as a series of successful challenges to the regional and the global order. Globally, they are on the verge of stockpiling enough fissile material for the bomb, which is and should be, must remain central to our concerns looking towards the future. And 2023 was a year in which they advanced almost without hindrance as the IAEA recently reported, their plans for the accumulation of fissile material. 60% enrichment has no other purpose than being the one penultimate step before the military grade enrichment. They are not yet in possession of the bomb, but they are increasingly within reach. And meanwhile, they've very successfully operated their proxy system without having to pay a penalty for it so far. Although there's a subtle hint from the Israeli Ministry of Defense that Israel did act in Iran. He says we acted in 6 out of 7 fronts from which we have been attacked. We know of no Israeli operations in Iran.
Maybe cyber.
He said he mentioned Iran by name, Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, the Syrian situation, Lebanon, the West Bank, and of course.
If we didn't see any explosion, maybe there was an implosion somewhere.
Perhaps he didn't. He said there's 1 of 6 out of the 7 we have taken actions in. So, and since I'm not aware of any action by Israel, as distinct from the Americans, on Iraqi soil, let's assume that certain things did happen in Iran, but we cannot, of course, speak to any specifics. But they have not paid any major price for their proxy game. So, for the time being, they are the winners for 2023. But of course, if Hamas goes down to a grinding defeat in the early part of 2024, the equation could change. I would very carefully say that paradoxically, another winner, this is why we're not talking about entirely a zero-sum game, has been the American influence and presence in the region. The Biden administration rose very quickly up to the challenge of October 7, played a role in deterring the Iranians and, let's say, containing the level of Hezbollah involvement to a, let's say, mid-intensity or low intensity in terms of their own capacity, and has demonstrated a willingness to lead in a very complex situation. Now we are seeing the formation of a naval force to deter and degrade Houthi capabilities to threaten shipping in the Red Sea. The American administration actually looks much more robust in its capability to affect developments in the region than China, the global rival, which was basically nowhere to be seen since October 7th, and Russia, which is still mired in a very difficult war in Ukraine.
Amnon, let me ask you, let me give you a proposition. It seems as if you look at Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, perhaps the Houthis, what this axis, the arch enemies of Israel ever since we have peace treaties with Egypt and Jordan, what they did is build up towards the possibility that Israel will attack or counterattack, and in anticipating that, they have built their counter action. For instance, Hamas built the underground system and abducted so many Israelis in order to hinder the Israeli counteroffensive, which was sure to come if Hamas attacked. Iran, as Eran just said, is stockpiling its enriched uranium and perhaps is enjoying what Israel is doing with or against Hamas and Hezbollah as an anticipation of for a possible Israeli action against Iran itself. But if Israel is preoccupied with these secondary fronts, Israel would be less able to hit Iran. What do you think of this proposition?
Let me put it this way. First of all, if you look at the Iranian ideology towards Israel, they claim that if you apply a lot of pressure on the civil society, in the end, it will collapse inside, and the whole issue will go down.
So the center of gravity is Israeli society.
Right, right. Now, in order to do that, they generated a coalition of proxies over the last 2 years, headed by Qasem Soleimani and his predecessor, which is Ismail Qani. And they tied together Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis, the pro-Iranian militias in Syria and in Iraq, okay? And they tried to generate some existence of their proxies in the northern part of Judea, of Samaria, sorry, okay? In the area of Jenin and other parts of this, and to combine that with Arab Israelis. And of course, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza. The idea was that all of them together, attacking Israel from all gravities, in the end will apply so much pressure on the civil society that Israel will go down.
That no matter how the Israeli Defense Forces, including the Israeli Air Force, with its range and capability to reach the Iranian infrastructure, what matters is who gives the orders to the forces, and right, which is the government, and who gives the orders to the government.
Right, right. And of course, the inside pressure on the government, okay, to change its policy and other things as well. Now, if you look what happened during the last, let's say, year, on April, they gave us a demonstration.
At Megiddo.
Not only Megiddo. On April, during the Passover holiday, they launched rockets from Syria, from Lebanon, from Syria, and from Gaza simultaneously, demonstrating their capabilities to combine all of them together at one arena. Okay? Meaning he's hitting Israel. Now, what happened from October 7, Hamas was disappointed. Hamas expected all of them to work together just like they planned it, and to attack Israel simultaneously, and to downgrade the pressure on Gaza. They didn't anticipate that they will go so much deep into Gaza. I mean Hamas. I mean, especially Mohammed Def and the Hessan War. Okay?
They did not anticipate that the IDF will act
so strongly and so decisively, just like they do, just like we do right now, for the last couple of months. Now, it didn't happen. Hezbollah is maintaining some low-intensity conflict along the border with Lebanon, maintaining its equation that he settled for himself that you are attacking mainly military position, and if you hit civilians, we are going to hit back civilians in Israel, and that's the equation. On the Syrian front, some rockets are being launched, but not to a large extent.
But that means that the proxies are not so much of the proxies which Tehran anticipated, because Hezbollah, the main arm of the Revolutionary Guard Quds Force here, apparently also has Lebanese considerations at heart.
Of course. First of all, its main idea is to be Lebanese, meaning it doesn't want to go and destroy whole Lebanon, just like happened in Gaza. Second, the Iranians are telling Hezbollah, please keep on low profile, because we didn't build your capabilities in order to waste it, in a way, on the Palestinians in Gaza. But only in case we are going to attack, Israel, of course, is going to attack in Tehran or in Iran, that will be the first response. Okay? So they keep on low profile with Hezbollah. They don't succeed with the Israeli Arabs. They don't succeed with Judea and Samaria, because we maintain a lot of pressure on the other side. And in the end, it comes out that you have Hezbollah on one hand, you have the Houthis, which are not threatening only Israel, but all the international commercial vessels.
So Iran, if you take all of that together, is winning or leading by points, but not by the knockout that it wanted.
Right.
Okay.
And
Uzi,
my question to myself as well,
please do.
based on that and this balance sheet, what can we expect from them as next? Will the Iranian strategy think that they have been validated by their assumptions? A few corrections have been made, and they will pursue the same strategy, the one which says ultimately Israel will collapse from within, we should activate, and therefore there would be a continuation. Would they escalate? I don't think so, but at least they will continue with the same. Or will they revise their strategy, saying, well, Israel has proven more resilient, and they have been able to separate, so we have to revise the policy? That's my question to ourselves.
And the answer?
Well,
The answer
it's easy to say
is in the mail.
It will remain the same. But one has to be cautious against one possibility which is higher than the other, that they may let it escalate.
Okay, let me ask all of you a similar common question. The American angle, and you're all old Washington hands, America watchers. We are already in the midst of an election season. January, first primaries, the candidates will be chosen soon by the parties. I'm betting, I personally am willing to bet on Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee for candidate. I know it's quite a long shot, but I think Biden will be the Democratic nominee. As for the Republicans, we will see what happens with Trump's legal problems, what happens, whether Nikki Haley can all of a sudden surprise him. But the question is not only personal. Can the United States, in an election year, perform the duties and responsibilities of a superpower here in the Middle East? What's your view?
I think, Eran's observation of the American role has been succinct. I think they might, in spite of pressures. I don't see a leader who would emerge into a leadership position who would advance an isolationist policy.
Really, but Trump, especially in the way he treated NATO and other...
Yeah, but Trump was special, and in a way he was also very active. Remember that the deal of the century, what has matured here, is a variation in that theme in terms of the coalition. But there are certain values in America that has been distressing to us who looked up as America. For example, the president of Harvard University engaging in badgering. That's shocking. that may be not the American that we all thought would have.
Wouldn't happen to Trump himself. He never wrote anything which was lifted out of
Look, Harvard.
anyone else.
So America,
Not only Harvard, Veritas. The very slogan of this august institution.
By the way, if we're talking Veritas, you saw that suggestion that if Yale does not want to call couscous Israeli couscous, we should reclaim Urim v'Tumim off their logo.
Yes.
But, anyway,
You saw that.
yes.
Retaliation, yeah. Yes, Eran, what's your
great.
view regarding
Look,
American politics and American policy?
first of all, let's remember that Pennsylvania Avenue has another end. And there what we saw...
The one Trump sent his supporters to.
Well,
January 6th.
interesting. Well, and that may actually lead perhaps to a disruptive attempt to actually disqualify him. And I have seen indications that if he is not the Republican nominee, Biden may reconsider. He would run against him. I'm not sure he would run against Haley. That's an interesting
You see a Harris versus Haley
I don't know.
contest? Interesting.
It could open the whole.
May the best man win.
Newsom or whoever. Women of Indian origin are taking over. Look, Britain already has an Indian prime minister. So does Ireland. Some of the leading corporations in the world have Indian leaders. Why not America? But anyway.
In Israel, Netanyahu claimed that he is of Sephardic extraction.
Well, let's leave that out of this present conversation. Look, Congress is very solid on our issues. There is the level of isolation of the squad and the hard anti-Israeli group within the progressive camp was manifest in the censure of Rashid Tlaib.
But aid to Israel has become hostage to Ukraine, border, even internal revenue service
Cuts, yes,
budget.
Mike Johnson's attempt to take the 14 billion out of the IRS. But these are all political games. At the end, I believe that the supplemental for Israel will get through.
We'll see soon.
And we shall see that happening soon. The bottom line is we see the votes. They are very solid. There is an understanding that this war on Hamas actually does carry much broader implications. In a sense, it has found its place in the mind of the most significant player, Joe Biden himself, as part of the same challenge as Putin's aggression in Ukraine and the potential Chinese aggression, should it happen, against Taiwan, which are the determining long-term issues on the global scene. And for Biden to place the October 7th in the context of this effort by the United States to resume the leadership of what once again is referred to as the free world, that gives the war a very different meaning than a local skirmish, brutal skirmish between two national movements.
Amnon, your view.
It's an election year, of course, and President Biden has been criticized for broadly supporting Israel. And of course, a violation of civil rights and humanity and so on, of course. Now, he has a complicated situation because he's facing mainly three main challenges. The first one, of course, and the most important is China. And the Chinese are being more aggressive and more aggressive, especially on South China Sea. Okay, against the Philippines and other entities or states that are bordering the South China Sea. Second, they have the issue of Europe. They have to support Ukraine, they have to support allies in Europe, and in the end, they have Israel. Now, as long as they go into these elections campaign during the coming month, I believe the support in Israel will go down a little bit. a little bit, not to a larger extent, but less than it is today.
Define Israel, please. You mean the policies of the current government of Israel?
Of course.
Not the state of Israel and its existence.
No. I'm speaking about the current situation of the war between Israel and Hamas and maybe other proxies as well. It can be to a larger extent, it can be to a narrower extent. Depends on the circumstances, of course.
So we have to, of course, see what comes ahead. But the three of you have a lot of experience in intelligence and special missions, special operations. And what is the role of intelligence now? Because none of us here has anticipated up to October the 6th what will happen the next day. Can intelligence help policymakers? Because we are quite astute in analyzing the past. But can we really not predict the future, but can we really give options for the future which will help policymakers as well as populations prepare for the worst, short of staying in the bunker all the time?
Well, I think that, sometimes the definition of the missions of intelligence and the circumstances change. But essentially, the answer is yes, and intelligence is a vital instrument of government. Now, what is its duty? Its duty is basically to inform the leaders and the decision makers so that their decisions would be established as much as possible on information of any kind which is relevant to the issue at stake. Now, in this war, for example, we had a miserable case of failure in one of the central questions of missions of intelligence, and that is providing early warning. The failure to do that was catastrophic because when that kind of surprise happens, of being attacked offensively with a penetration of your territory, and then the management of the war is affected by this point of departure, so we had here a dramatic failure of early warning. But this does not conclude the other missions of intelligence. For example, those which are related to the management of the war, the targets, the intentions of the current leaders there, because we are now into a very difficult hostage conditions. So you want to know as much information, not just about early warning, but even for the current management of intelligence. Now, therefore, it is essential, and the better it is, the better, presumably, the decisions will be. Now, we all are aware that failures happen.
But you're talking operationally now. Once the war started, what about the strategic intelligence function, or is it?
What do you call strategic? The more wide and long you look, the fuzzier it becomes, because so many imponderables and things could happen. But to the extent that you provide useful information, some of it could be strategic, but is relevant and is plausible and is real and may happen, the better it is. But intelligence there are many areas which intelligence services cannot predict even from one day to another. Depends on their coverage, on their ability to have access to the innermost thoughts of the adversary.
Or of your own leader.
True, very true, because that is the product. So intelligence is vital, still is. But I caution again, one should not expect from intelligence to be able to tell things which by definition are impossible. For example, when the leaders of the other side themselves don't know how they will act. So how do you want you to be able to say with precision how the leader will act? So one has to caution about the possible shortcomings of intelligence and then base your policy always with a modicum of prudence, saying that you may be a victim of yet one of those gaps that do happen inevitably, which are intelligence shortcomings.
But Amnon, you have been personally aligned with two of the most glorified institutions of the Israeli defense establishment, the Directorate of Military Intelligence, and Mossad. Have we all in Israel been blinded by the image of those institutions? And we turned out that we have deluded ourselves to believe that they are all-knowing. There were also declarations by political leaders, perhaps in order to deter, for instance, Hezbollah from plotting against Israel. Don't do it. We know everything. Our intelligence has penetrated. You have no chance. Maybe there was some intention behind it. But if there was one, it succeeded too much in blinding ourselves.
We are always short with resources, always. Now, you cannot give the same quality of information about everything. You have to focus, you have to prioritize. Let's say that now we prioritize on Hezbollah, and we focus all our efforts on Hezbollah. In the end, we'll know about, let's say roughly speaking, about 80% or 75% or 70% of what they really possess.
Not more.
Not more. The main idea is, or the main problem, or the main challenge is intentions. Mm-hmm. Okay? You cannot really predict what the man is thinking this morning or this evening, and how he's going to react tomorrow morning.
Wait. Intentions first in the process lead to force building. Mm-hmm. Hassan Nasrallah, let's take him, 17, 20, 10 years ago, decides that sometime in the future he will want to do something. Therefore, he starts acting, acquiring, digging, whatever he does. Israel does not do anything militarily to degrade his forces because of whatever you talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. Then becomes the intention to put into action what was built.
Right.
Now, what part are you referring to?
The intentions, first of all. Intentions would be always a mystery. We'll never really know what they think. We can assess, but not more than that. You really don't know what he's thinking, whom he's consulting, what is the influence that the Iranian government or the Iranian regime has upon him in restraining or encouraging to attack and so on. So we don't really know the fact of intentions. We can only assess. A. B, about forthcoming. If we concentrate all our efforts on Hezbollah, as I said before, we know about 70% of roughly speaking, of its capabilities. We'll always some mysteries that are unsolved and some surprises, just like we found out in Gaza right now. Even though we concentrated a lot of efforts on Gaza and we believed we knew a lot, and now we understand how much we don't know.
How deep the tunnels were, how wide was the network.
Of course, and we really don't know to what extent we don't know. Okay, so now we don't have the resources to focus on each one of the arenas separately, because in the end, you are short with resources and you have to concentrate or to prioritize. And you can prioritize on one arena or two arenas, and that's it. No more than that.
So if, for instance, in 2015, Iran entered the JCPOA agreement, and it gave Israel time and money saved by this account in order to prioritize other forces, other efforts. The fact that Trump, under pressure or enticement by Netanyahu, broke American participation in this agreement, threw the Israeli preparations out of joint, because all of a sudden you once again had to concentrate on this account.
I don't believe we really left the Iranian issue for a minute. Even though we signed the agreement in 2015, still Iran is what we call the first priority or the top priority of Israel regarding the nuclear weapons. And therefore, we didn't leave Iran for a minute, and we kept on concentrating on Iran and keeping digging as much as we can. So it wasn't a great turn off suddenly on 2018 to go back to something that we left.
But by degree, wasn't it less or less urgent because the JCPOA was supposed to go into sunset and some clauses only by 2030?
No, because we really wanted to see whether they keep on with what was decided and what was approved, and to see what they're doing really under the cover.
But you see, if we define the necessity and value of intelligence by the decisions that we will be called upon to make, then the key decision may be the one we may come to a point in which we should see whether we have to stand firm by our promise to take preventive action, preemptive action before they assemble a weapon, and the question would be, what do you say Israeli intelligence on this option as against its alternative, to decide not to take preemptive action and to try to assess what would be the advantages and disadvantages.
Do you have a recommendation?
I know how to think about that. I don't know. And my suggestion was to employ the solarium method.
Okay.
Because you have to evaluate what's very difficult. It involves both in assumptions about capabilities as well as current scenario, and then assumptions about future intentions.
Please expand on it.
No, I think to underestimate...
No, about the solarium first.
No, the solarium was the Eisenhower method of trying to assess the future of the Soviet nuclear threat.
And American options.
And the American options. There are fields here that we cannot really, aspects of this exercise, if we apply it ourselves, that we cannot discuss. But going back to intentions, it was always central to the mission of intelligence generally, of Israeli intelligence specifically, to understand intentions, not only capabilities. For many years, we were faced with enemies with large standing armies whose capability was to strike at any given moment, and Israel did not want to live as if it could be struck at any given moment. Therefore, the centrality of understanding intentions was relevant then, and it continues to be relevant now. But here I want to make a suggestion as to what happened to us. Relying too much on technical collection means, whether they are visual or signal, tends to underestimate the importance of actually open sources in understanding the mind and intentions of the people we are facing. And we have seen decisions taken to degrade the elements of intelligence collection which were focused on the larger picture through open source material, through speeches, through texts, through writings. And
because you intelligence types revere top secret.
There is a tendency to try to put everything into the special.
If it's unclassified, what's the big deal?
And still, I think some of the most, in my career, one or two of the most significant conclusions I came to were based on reading an open text. And I think anyone who read,
I agree,
who would have read Hamas texts, Sinwar's text, would
not
have
just
been...
text. The man comes and presents systematically his strategy and gives an account and explains the rationale, and there it is on a silver platter.
So because it's no secret.
Because it's in open sources.
Yes.
Open sources.
Yes.
You don't
That's
really
right.
give much attention to that.
Everyone can watch.
Because everybody can speak.
And
do you really believe everybody speaks?
That's how I try to teach my younger officers. Read their texts, read their background, read their literature if there is such.
Okay,
biography, songs, their music.
All we have for the next 365 days is 1 minute for all three of you. A prediction, or you can make a wish. I'm not sure we can grant it. Just what is going to happen one event, one person in 2024. Eran.
Israel will win the war on Hamas. I believe that it will be carried through to an end. And Putin will opt for a deal with the Ukrainians in 2024.
So maybe
that
Putin
will change the global game.
So maybe Putin can have a ceasefire with Sinwar and we will be out of it.
He's welcome to Sinwar if he wants it.
General Sofrin.
I believe that we are going to fight all over 2024. Not only one arena, maybe even more. I hope not, but it can be. And the second issue, I believe that what Eran said is right. Putin is going to get to some deal with the Ukrainian. The Ukrainian, we don't have too many options, but to give up the eastern part to the Russians and...
Uzi, one line.
Just as it began, the most important change that I do hope for is a change of government in Israel, which would rectify some of the failures and flaws of the outgoing, hopefully, government. And based on that the policies followed by the Israeli government would be better suited to not only conduct the war with Hamas, because it will be continuing, but to recover lost ground, to rebuild our relationship with America, and to work in various directions in such a way that we would benefit from the very bad circumstances that we had in the year before.
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Uzi Arad, Dr. and Colonel Eran Lerman, General and Dr. Amnon Sofrin. This is all the time that we have for this year, not only for this program. Thank you, our viewers. May you have a happy and quiet new year. This has been Powers in Play, and for the time being, Shalom from Jerusalem.
God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. In a world where darkness is rampant, manifest by injustice, hatred, violence, or war, disinformation fueled by deception serves as a source that perpetuates evil. TV7 Israel strives to serve as a beacon of light, sharing the truth with the nations from Jerusalem. As we enter this season of giving, we humbly ask for your support. Your generous donations play a vital role in ensuring that our content remains free. We look forward to another year when we are able, by the grace of God, to bring to you, our viewers, the light of truth. From all of us here at TV7 Israel News, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.